doing double things today. So I'll do some of the other parts. But anyway, here's the agenda today. I asked Lorne from Salt Lake School District to offer us a cultural reverence, and of course, we have Dustin again. Really appreciate what Dustin does for our program and some of the mind opening avenues that he has. So those are always good for us to as our a baggage of knowledge and a baggage of college educated people talking to us. So, and I'm going to do a little bit on cultural comparisons. I've been toying with this for a while, and then I start to write some of these things down, and I use this quite a bit. And we have updates with the mission and mission and vision statement. This is associated with the ESSA plan from Utah, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And hopefully that we'll have an update from the Urban Indian Center as well as from Clayton, the novel language class, and then we'll adjourn. So with that, we'll go according to this, and I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to ask again, Lorne. So Lorne, go ahead and you can take us through the cultural reverence piece, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. So it's Native American Heritage Month. Uh, for our district, we try to go out to the schools, uh, read different stories, and I always tell the schools, it's always good to learn about the tribes and learn about different tribes outside. That way, they have a good open mind of what's out there, uh, and same thing with my worker, the K6 worker. Mainly when we do stories, uh, try to bring different stories from different tribes. And with you, for you all, I'm gonna read a little story from the Abenaki Abenaki tribe. Abenaki is from the Vermont, Connecticut, uh, New Hampshire. So hope you guys enjoy. Sorry, my computer wasn't really looking this. I'm gonna have to use my phone. Oh, how do I turn this? Okay. Uh,
If you need some help, Madeline's here to kind of
oh,
guide you
there we
through it.
go.
Okay.
Yeah. When the Creator made the world, He made the mountains, the trees, and the animal people. Something was missing. The earth was not complete. He decided it was time to make. He looked around for there for the shape. He looked around for the shape of them with, and there were stones. He piled the stones large, high, and breathing of the wind of life onto them. He stirred the spirits to wait. The stones rose. He began to move. They began to move, and they were large and walked the earth with terrible power. But they were hard and unfeeling. They did not care where they. The owner, the creator, was not pleased. He shook the earth until the stone people were destroyed. This time he moved. This time he chose to shape the people from the ashes of the tree. Oops, sorry. I spilled coffee on this. Um, these people of the ash were growing and green with their mother earth, their skin. They breathed of all life. They shared their breath with all the living things, the lights, the limbs, the ripple, and strong. They danced like leaves in the wind, and it was called Dawnland. Yeah, that was the Abenaki creation story, uh, East Coast of the United States. Um, like I said, we always try to keep a keep different stories tallied around the states, and you know, I thought it was a pretty cool little story for
Mhm.
the little ones when we go out and read stories. Yeah. Any questions?
No, hey, thanks, Lorne. I think it gives us, with stories like creation stories or stories from the past, it gives us credibility in terms of our culture. Keeps our cultural society together because oftentimes that's the foundation which our thought process originates from,
Hmm.
and it gives the tribes and it gives the culture autonomy.
Hmm.
Because I don't think that there's no other people that have very deep roots with their creation stories and where we came from, and some of our prophecies come from that too. So appreciate that, Lorne. It was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. We have Dustin, and I think he's here somewhere. I
Yeah.
saw his name.
Good
Okay, there he
morning.
is.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Oh yes, yes.
Okay, good. I'm gonna share my screen real quick, and I'm gonna pick some stuff that I think is going to be coming up soon for in within the state. So I'm gonna just review. We found out yesterday on the news that Angela Romero is going to reintroduce a couple bills. She's going to reintroduce the Indian Child Welfare Act state statute attempt. We tried that last year. Didn't quite go through. She's going to reintroduce that. She's also going to insert a bill or an amendment to the missing and murdered Indigenous relatives. I don't have a lot of information on that yet, so I thought I'd share why the Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978 was important, and why there are states within the United States that want to put it in state statute. Okay, so I think that that's a cool thing to look at. And Lorne, I appreciate the story you shared. I really enjoy those creation stories from different tribes, and I feel like all of us should hear them and learn from them. A few years ago, probably about probably about 10, 15 years ago, Forrest Kutch, he edited a book called The Indians of Utah, and all the tribes were asked to provide information, their histories in Utah, and many of them, or there was one or two that started off with like, well, in 1830 this happened, in 1840 this happened, but for most of the tribes that wanted to share their history, they started with their creation stories. And I feel like you get a really good sense of who people are when you hear their creation stories and what's important to them and what they put emphasis on and what symbolism is best for them, and to explain how life works and how to go through life in a good way. So, Lorne, thanks for very much for sharing that story. The Indian Child Welfare Act it's an act designed to help keep Indian families together. Um, and I'll go through the different parts of the Indian Child Welfare Act, and we'll talk a little bit about what tribes are trying to do within the state. Um, but I wanted to give you just a little bit of background on it. And when I was in college, there was always rumors that Native women in the 60s and 70s were getting uh, they were they weren't giving consent to be sterilized to prevent them to have more children, and sometimes these women didn't even know what was happening to them. The procedure took place during the birth of a child, and while they were being sterilized, they were also being forced to sign um, parental rights, or termination of parental rights paperwork, so that their kids would enter into the foster care system. And I always thought of these as rumors because I couldn't find a lot of information on it. And when I got to law school, I was hoping someone had information on it, but no one did. And then after I graduated, within these last like 5 years, now you're going to be able to find at least news articles of of um of this happening, and it started to come out um, up in Canada, where government doctors in Canada were starting to come out and talk about what they did up there, and what their role was, and really just tearing apart the Native family. And so in 1978, uh, they really the federal government and tribal members, tribal leaders, and they all got together and said, hey, our numbers are dropping, and there's a number of children being removed from homes here, and we're not getting them back. And so the Congress ends up passing the Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978, and they said in the legislative history, it says that the greatest resource for Native American families or Native American tribes is the children. And if we keep removing children from Native families, then these tribes won't exist anymore. And so, luckily, in 78, there was some type of awakening going on in Congress for them to draft this Indian Child Welfare Act uh, bill and get it into law. And at that same year, they actually passed the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. Right? There must have been some type of awakening at the time where that people are becoming aware, the non-Indian leaders of the United States are becoming aware that, you know what, we not only are we removing children from their homes, that we're not give them a chance to come back and learn who they are and their culture, but also, even if we get them back, we put so many restrictions on tribes and the parts of their religion they can practice, and the things that they need to exercise ceremonies weren't being made available to them, so they needed to make those available also. So 1978 seems to be a pretty important year as far as Indian legislation goes and things. So it's just that's just FYI if you want to look more into that. But in the Indian Child Welfare Act of 78, the whys, well, high numbers of Indian children were being removed and placed with non-Indian families, and the statistics he find show that 75 to 80% of Indian families had at least one child removed. That's huge, right? Um, and when these kids were being placed in adoptive homes or foster homes, uh, they concern for their tribal beliefs, for their practices, for their language preservation, that wasn't really even taken into account. And we didn't really take into account as a government or government institutions the importance of culture, and in this case, indigenous culture of things, right, where children are being removed and placed somewhere else and not knowing who they are when they become the adults or reach adulthood. And we find that it was pretty close to the effects that were happening with boarding schools, right? These kids were being removed from their homes. And in the early days, they didn't even go home. They once they went to boarding school, they stayed until they aged out or they graduated. And a lot of these kids, when they came back home, they weren't accepted very well because because they were gone during the school year, their language skills were suffering. Because they were gone during the school year, a lot of tribes do their cultural teachings and ceremonies during the winter, so they missed out on a lot of that. And so not only were they being removed from their families, but there we see that boarding schools and forced removal of children from their homes, it removes them from their culture and their identity and the things that make them them. And so this is important that the Indian Child Welfare Act was passed and that the United States as a government is making proactive efforts to ensure that Indian children are stay with their families. Uh, Now, why again, right? During the early Supreme Court years, uh, Justice Chief Justice John Marshall, he had to come up with why why for the U.S. government to aid Native people. And one of the biggest things he said is that when we were in this constitutional convention, we didn't even really consider tribal governments when we were doing that. In fact, the only place where tribes are mentioned in the Constitution is in the Interstate Commerce Clause, where it states that Congress has the authority to deal with trade between states, foreign nations, and tribes, and Indian tribes. And so, uh, it was it was hard for to figure out how the U.S. could help regulate or govern or be involved with native tribes and its native people. But he ends up coming up with something called the trust doctrine. And this trust doctrine basically states that because tribes are not used to the European form of government that is found here, um, and because treaties weren't written in tribal languages or in ways that tribal leaders could fully understand, because of the westward migration of settlers and non-Indians, that tribes got removed from their lands, and all these things. We they the Congress and the people that helped draft this legislation said, what, this is something that will bring stability to tribal nations. It's going to be a foundation of tribal nations because it goes after the best interest of Indian children. We're looking after those things. We want Indian families and tribes to feel secure in where they're at and who they are, and we want to make sure that that the that the tribes have the resources they need and laws that they need to help them protect their children. And this Indian Child Welfare Act is called the gold standard of child placement. And the reason it's called the gold standard is because that they create a preference system or priority placement system and the first priority is to the child's family, and that family has, you know, has first rights to go and take care of that child. And most social services and adoptive agencies, they believe this is a gold standard because they know through experience that the most secure placements, the safest placements, and the placements where the kids felt more at ease and could continue functioning, this occurred when they were placed with family members. And that's the very first placement priority of the Indian Child Welfare Act. It just says um, that a preference will be given to and placement of Indian children, with the first preference given to the child's extended family. That's on both sides of his family. So that includes the dad's family, that includes the mom's family. So it's both sides. Um, and then if we can't find placement in there, safe placement within that, then we move on to other families within that child's tribe. And if that doesn't work out, we look at other Indian families within other tribes to see if they can do it. If you look at this, this is the language from the preferences, right? And it says any child placed or any child accepted for foster care or pre-adoptive placement shall be placed in the least restrictive setting, which most approximates a family, and in which his special needs, if any, may be met. So they're taking a really close look at this and saying, how are we measuring these placements, and saying who gets these preference placements? Well, what they're saying is that we want the secure placements, good placements, strong placements happen when a child is placed in a setting that is as close to his home setting as possible, as safely as possible. They actually make mention that these, when you're considering placement, you should consider how close it is to the child's home. So not only are we talking about the comforts of home and recognizing home and being comfortable in a house, but we're also looking outside the house, the neighborhood, the community. They want to make sure that that's part of the consideration when we place children in adoptive homes or foster homes, is how close are they to home? Are they going to be recognizing the landscape? Will they recognize the streets? Will they recognize neighbors? Things like that. That all contributes to a secure placement. It says any foster care or pre-adoptive placement, a preference shall be given in the absence of good cause to the contrary to a placement with, and it just lists them all right here: extended family, Indian tribe, um, non-Indian licensed authority, um, an institution approved by the Indian tribe. Basically, all the options that come up are to guarantee the safety and welfare of the child, and that's important. If you recall, a couple years ago, a family out of Texas wanted to challenge the Indian Child Welfare Act. And most of the time, when non-Indian families that are trying to adopt Indian children, when they challenge the act, they say it's a discriminatory law. They're saying you're discriminating against us as non-Indians, and you're not allowing us to adopt a child. And those arguments failed most of the time. They were just, I mean, they were. I don't think anybody really bought into that. But Brackeen v. Holland was different. Instead of saying that the disadvantage was going to the non-Indian adoptive parents, they're saying that the equal protection clause, this um, was acting against the Indian child, saying this Indian child has to jump through way more hoops than any other child just because of his race. Now, uh, that is that's an argument that's not really supported by 200 years of law in the United States. That the reason being is because we don't consider Indian children We recognize Indian children as being racially Indian. We recognize Indians across the United States as being racially Indian. But more than that, we recognize Indians as being citizens of a tribal government. And when we say that, it goes beyond a racial status of being Indian. It now enters a political, legal status of being Indian. So to say that there's an equal protection clause based on the child's race is inaccurate, at least to the hundreds of years of the Supreme Court that state that being an Indian is a legal status. This law wasn't uh, there to help a race of people. It was there to help a government with citizens. So they usually those equal protection arguments fell. They also said that it was an unlawful delegation of power and that it was an anti-commandeering violation. And those basically are saying that you're forcing state governments to do the will of the federal government. And you can't do that, and that's wrong. If the feds want something done, the feds have to do it themselves. And so let's see how this worked out. There was a number of people that chimed in on this, and one of them was a man named Joseph Singer, who's a Harvard law professor, and he just could not grasp why Brackeen, why the Brackeen family would push a racial um, equal protection argument on this, because he too knows that for the last 250 years, this government to government relationship between the feds and Indian tribes isn't based on race, but is based on two political entities working together to get along. This is what Joseph Singer said. He said the court's decision could have revolutionary catastrophic consequences. There are hundreds of treaties with Indian nations that are still in effect. If you cannot treat Indian nations as sovereigns, if you cannot treat Indians differently from non Indians, does that make all those treaties unconstitutional? Right? Because treaties aren't agreements between private individuals. Treaties aren't agreements between a government and a private individual. Treaties are agreements between two governments. Okay. So if we're saying this is all racial, then what happens to those hundreds of years of treaties and those hundreds of treaties that were made between the United States and tribes? Are all those treaties going to be unconstitutional? And if you look at Title 25 of the United States Code, the entire section of United States Code for Indian is based on Indian nations, being governments. And so we're going to eliminate an entire code of law. Um, if we agree with Brackeen and say that Indian is just a racial status, he didn't think that was going to happen. And if it did happen, he was trying to emphasize how much how many problems that would cause um, within things. And that Bracken v. Holland case got a little crazy, and it really did divide the country. It divided our state a lot because there wasn't a whole lot of information or correct information going around, and just the way the Brackeens presented the case made things really hard because in newspapers and magazines and online you saw photos of the Brackeens and the other families, the other non-Indian families that were trying to adopt Indian children. But you never saw photos of Indian children. You never saw photos of the birth families or the birth parents of these Indian children. And because Indians are completely taken out of the picture during this, in media, we forget what we're talking about here. We forget we're looking after the best interest of Indian children, not so much the best interest of non-Indian adoptive parents. Okay. And they shifted the focus to non-Indian adoptive parents and away from Indian children, which is why the Indian Child Welfare Act was put in place to begin with, to protect children. The previous attempt to adopt ICWA into state statute was House Bill 40. That's what failed. Uh, the tribes got together. All 8 tribes supported this, but they all got together and they made a draft of what a state version of ICWA would look like. Every state agency that's involved in foster care or foster care placement, they all supported HB 40. Again, all the tribes supported HB 40. The governor supported HB 40. Lieutenant governor supported HB 40. But there were people um, in our state legislature that did not. They may have been riding this national Republican wave that surprisingly is a lot more extreme than our state Republican wave. Our state Republicans are not the same as our national Republican agenda, which seems pretty extreme. There, not to say that there are some state legislators that are Republican that are pretty extreme, but our state in general isn't as extreme as the national Republican movement. But like I said, there are a few in our state that believe that, and they're the ones that went after this, that went after House Bill 40 and tried to put it into it. Um, and this is not even an exaggeration. If you look at my fourth bullet point, minutes before they had the committee hearing on House Bill 40, the committee all got together and just amended the crap out of it. They redlined it, they added more stuff, and they took out stuff. And at the end, this they it was basically, it wasn't even in compliance with the federal ICWA statute anymore. It was a document that couldn't even legally get pushed forward, much less voted on by our legislature and signed into law. They changed it so much that the actions within it looked illegal. And so it never ended up going anywhere, and it didn't pass last year. And this year, some tribes brought it up and talked about it some more. Uh, but there are a few tribes that want to try it again and bring it back. And and people must be listening because in the news, uh, Angela Romero, who's in the House, she's going to reintroduce and try to get the state of Utah to pass an ICWA statute again this session. Now, what happened with Bracken v. Holland? Well, one, the challenge to Congress's power to exercise plenary authority in respect to Indian affairs, that was affirmed, right? The Supreme Court said Congress's power to legislate with respect to Indians is well established and broad. So this isn't anything new. Congress has been doing this a long time. Anti-commandeering, um, sometimes uh, there are certainly many examples when the feds pass a law, the states have to follow it, and states don't always like that. States want to have control over certain things, and they hate it when the federal government appears to overstep or step into the state realm. Um, and so, they but sometimes when the federal government passes laws, states just have to abide by it. That's just how preemption works. Um, but the most surprising thing, the scariest thing, was that Justice Kavanaugh, uh, he kept that equal protection argument alive, saying that he needed more information. Um, he's the Trump appointees into the Supreme Court. They're trying really hard to dissolve the legal status or the political status of Indian people and Indian tribes, because that would mean the end of tribal governments. And if you remember an era of termination and relocation in the 50s and 60s, where tribes were terminated, where they lost their sovereign status, they end up losing their reservations. They end up losing access to their natural resources, and they're no longer able to rely on any rights and privileges associated with being a tribal member. And so that's kind of scary that uh, that Judge Kavanaugh and other conservative Republican um, justices are leaving the door open on that to see what happens with it. And he stated that in his dissent. But so we're waiting on that. We're and another reason why they didn't address it was that the three non-Indian families that were trying to adopt Indian children, the tribes had all approved those adoptions. All the tribes that were notified, they were like, "Hey, yeah, go for it. Adopt this child. Just remember he's native and make sure he's enrolled and make sure he has access to learn his culture." And they went forward anyway. And so the Supreme Court said, well, it turns out you guys weren't in fact stopped from adopting children. You were able to adopt the children. So this argument you're bringing here on behalf of all possible non-Indian families that could be denied adoption privileges is moot. You can't really make that argument. You have no standing. You have no standing because your adoptions have already gone through. So we're not even going to address this. The reason I think this is important for Title VI, I know this seems really political and probably outside the realm of Indian education a little bit, but the reason I bring it up is because you may have Native students within your school district that are in foster care. They may not be living with their birth parents, and they may not even be living with extended family. So I wanted to make sure that you were sensitive to those situations that your students may be in. But also, you're in your position, in your as Title VI coordinators, you're in a position to provide that cultural education and connection for these students. So if they're moved outside of an Indian household and they don't have access to cultural education, cultural connection, cultural teachings, uh, maybe dance or songs or even even stories, um, I'd ask that you put some emphasis on that in your Title VI programs because this may be the only time these kids that are removed from their home actually get a cultural education and connection at that point. And also, these, especially older kids in foster care, they need to know what's available to them. They need to know, I mean, especially like if they're Navajo and they're juniors or seniors in high school, we need to let them know that they have to take some classes online with the Navajo Nation to be eligible for scholarships. We need to let them know that, if they age out of this system, what resources are available. When you become an adult, do they know about if they're in the Salt Lake area, do they know about the Urban Indian Center? Do they know about Sacred Circle Health? Do they know about IHS Health? Do they know, of the programs and resources that are available to them? You might be that person that is their connection to that. So I just ask that you be sensitive to your students and especially those that may be removed from their home and they're just trying to function and just get through school. To help them do that. Like I said, you might be their last shot at connecting to their culture. I don't know if people know this, but this is me and my family. That's me on the bottom right. And then my wife is in the middle, but I have two girls on the left and two boys kind of in the middle. These are all my children, and all my children are adopted. And I don't think my wife and I thought that this is how we would be making our family, but it's the way that was available to us and we took advantage of it. Our first adopted child was a family adoption. Was a member of my wife's family, and they needed someone to take care of their daughter, and we said yes, and she was very, very young. She was like 13 months, and we raised her as our child. And it's been a blessing to my wife and I just to have a child in the home that reminds you of what your purpose is as an adult and as a parent. When she was really young, she wanted a little sister. She was about 4, and she kept pushing us for a little sister. And finally, when she was about 6, we um, we were approved for another adoption, but it wasn't her sister. It was this guy right here, this boy. He was a little Navajo boy, and out of St. Louis. And so we were there for his birth. We met the family, and they chose us. They asked us to adopt. That's how that agency worked at the time. And so all they asked is that you just make sure you raise him Navajo. And we contacted the tribe. We notified the tribe, and just let them know what was going on. And the tribe didn't try to stop it. They didn't try to intervene. All they said was, "Congratulations. We wish you the best. We are not going to intervene at this time." And when he was about to turn 2, our oldest daughter right here, she was like, "Where's my sister?" I'm still waiting for my sister. So we put our names in the hat again to adopt, and we found this one right here on the left. And so this older one right here was about to turn 8, and this one was about to turn 6. And so we thought, they said, "Hey, why don't you set up a play date and see how you guys get along?" So as we drove out there, right before we got there, they called us, and we thought they were going to cancel the play date. They said, "Oh, we didn't tell you, but she has a little brother." And so we're like, "Okay." So we went, and the two boys played together, the two girls played together. Um, and they talked to him about adoption, and we talked to him about it. And when everyone felt good about it, they were placed with us. And we're multi-tribal here, where my wife is Navajo and Sioux from Fort Peck. I'm enrolled Navajo in Kiowa. 3 of my kids are Navajo. One of them is Sioux, and so we try really hard to make sure they have the information they need about both tribes, both tribal cultures, and we want them to feel comfortable in it, and we want them to make friends within these communities, and so we were excited for them to be together and be a part of our family. And this is something I'm going to say just to all of you, because when we move back to Utah up here, I just want to extend my gratitude to all of you and your families, and that you have, because these kids, that we brought into our family and become part of our family, they feel that love and support from all of you when they dance at powwows or go to community functions. When you reach out and shake hands of little kids, they remember it, and they really do feel welcome. And I think a large part of it is because of all of you here and the students that you have stewardship over, and the way that they treat each other in public. So, I'm ending with this photo here, and just to let you know that I'll tell you, I feel like the Indian Child Welfare Act is a great law. And is it perfect? No. Uh, but it's a common mistake to throw out really good because it's not perfect. Um, and I hope that you support it. And if you're wondering what ICWA is, I hope this helped. And I hope that if you have children within your school districts that are part of the foster system or have been adopted, again, I just hope you're sensitive to that and the things that they had gone through to get where they're at. So, uh, Chuck, that's what I got. I don't know if there's any questions from anyone, or any comments. If not, hey, thank you very much for this time, and allow me to share this with you all. If you need more information, just let me know. Is
Okay, I think Brenda has a question.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I was just trying to wave. But I was also wondering with the new administration coming in, how would that impact all of the current policies and tribal consolidation that's in place? So it's a little
Here,
worried.
here within the state.
Yes, and then
Yeah.
maybe even federally, if you know.
Well, I think what we're all bracing ourselves for is some very emboldened extremists coming up. We're bracing for that. But and you might see a little bit of that in the legislature too here in the state of Utah. But I think for the most part, uh, the governor's administration is still on board. If if tribes want to do it, they'll support it, but they want it to be tribally led. They want most tribal initiatives to be tribally led, something that they can support. We might, yeah, you might run into it might run into some trouble again, depending on who's in there. But I need to look to see if the same legislator is there or if there are any that were if there was any that were replaced. So that's something to look at too. I should note that a lot of attorneys around the U.S. they're not so sure that having state statutes is necessary because they believe that the Supreme Court upheld ICWA pretty well and pretty solidly. But so so a lot of lawmakers and a lot of attorneys they're just leaving it up to the tribes to see if this is something the tribes want to do. I saw, see, what's the best way to get foster families to get tribal enrollment numbers for enrollment into Title VI programs? Um, I would go through the foster care agency. At least when I adopted my children, I went through the Navajo Nation when I adopted, and they once placement was secure, Navajo Nation themselves they went and enrolled all the kids before they were placed with me to make sure they had census numbers on that. So there's numbers available, but you can get a hold of tribal enrollment agencies too. You could get a hold of like the vital records on Navajo Nation and say, hey, I'm an adoptive parent. Here's the court order. Um, I'm can you give me a copy of that CIB? And Navajo Nation's pretty good about it. They're better about it if you drive over there.
Yeah.
And but you have to make sure you have all your stuff with you when you do that because if you're missing something, they won't do it. But yeah, if you have like it, I'd go through the tribal vital records offices. But if your foster agency that help place them um, knew that they were native to begin with, they probably have some record of it uh, on file that you get a hold of too.
Mhm.
How about all of this talk about eliminating the Department of Education in DC? Like, is that something that we need to worry about? Because that's where all of our title funding comes
Mm.
from, like Title VI, Title I, Title III,
Yeah,
special ed, and it keeps going.
yeah, I'm with you, and just waiting to see if that would happen. That's a ginormous agency for them just to get rid of. Um, and if they turn that back over the state, if the feds release it and turn it over to the state and have states do it, we're gonna have to wait and see to see how that turns out. I don't know. I don't know if they have the ability to get rid of the Department of Education. I don't know if it's one of those extreme things you say just to remind people that they're Democrats or Republicans, before the primaries. So I'm going to have to wait and see on that one. I apologize.
Yeah, the thing that I've had in the past with that, they tried this about maybe 3, 4 presidents ago. They were trying to do away with the Department of Education completely. The Department of Education has a lot of arms and they have a lot of clout in terms of power. So I don't think I don't think they can take it completely apart, but they're going to go after certain programs that don't they think it's not doing justice to the students. but it's but completely doing away with the Department of Education. I don't think happen. But they may take little pieces from it though. So that's because again, I'm looking at the history. A few years ago, that was one of their proclamation was to do away with the Department of Education, and they tried, and it was too complex, and there was too many people that were invested in that educational arm. So so I guess right now you could say this is a wait and see approach. So
Okay, thank you.
okay. Hey Dustin, thank you. This is very, very enlightening in terms of information. I learned a lot today. So uh, especially that the trust doctrine. I mean,
Yeah,
there's laws, there's laws, foundations already been built, and it's just I think many have to go back and revisit that the foundation of that. Um, so it seems like that family from Texas, it, they really didn't, maybe didn't really understand the foundation where it was built and how it was built.
yeah.
But now
But
it's
side note on that, just in case anyone's wondering. So they had all once before they even filed the case, all their adoptions were approved. And but a law firm, a natural resource law firm that does business with oil and coal and uranium extraction,
mhm,
they're the ones that approached the Brackens and told them that we'll do this for free as long as you're the name on the case. And so the reason why they're doing it is a lot more sinister than we think. It's not just going after Indian families. They're actually, if they can break apart the Indian status laws, then and tribes are just another race or ethnic community in America, then they can go after tribal governments and open up all that land for extraction. So it's a
oh,
little scarier than that.
yeah,
Just knowing that that's what that law firm does. They're not a family law firm. they're
okay,
they're an economic development law firm. That's the
yeah,
scary part. But yeah,
yeah,
I'll try to keep everyone in up to
yeah,
date on what's happening, and if there's any other things going on, I'll talk about it too.
yeah,
Most likely though, Bears ears might be affected within a couple weeks of Trump's inauguration too. So just be aware of that too. All right.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, all right. Well, thank you, Dustin.
Yeah. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, everyone. You all have a good one. We'll
Okay.
see you.
Yeah, the next item on our agenda, I look back into the uh, the culture. I think Dustin kind of hit on that. With my experience in the classroom as well as being a administrator in certain schools and getting all this accumulation of knowledge and experiences, I start to look at the comparisons between two groups. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, Chuck.
Okay. So what I did was that I had the comparisons between two groups, and I just named this culture comparisons. And I'm just going to spend a few minutes on this. I think you guys kind of have the gist of it. But oftentimes I refer this these well the writing for professional development who are wanting to know the comparisons between American Indians and the white, and even the name American Indian and the white, sometimes it becomes controversial, and it's interchangeable. Like with the Indian, before 1492, I think we were called the people, but after 1492, we were referred to as Indian. So then today we use that interchangeably. We use Indian, American Indian, Native American for those people who live in the border of Canada and United States. They're First Nations, and some of the writings that we have today is, indigenous. So for me, those are all interchangeable, and sometimes they'll try to push me on why I use American Indian, and that's another conversation for another day. Then you get to the other is the white, exactly, how we do how are they referred to? They're white European, they're Anglo Caucasian, so. But in this diagram, I use white. It explains for me. It explains things a lot more cleaner and easier for me to refer to them as as that race. And I also found that not all on the left hand side you find the exhibit the characteristics of American Indians long ago. You go through any type of research, you'll find some of the information here, and also you find the white, the information there. And these observations sometimes that for me to conclude that not all American Indian or white people exhibit these characteristics anymore. They kind of work themselves into the middle. As they work inside to the middle, we find that both are beginning to become much more versed in a society. Then we become, everybody becomes bicultural. And then sometimes we use language, become bilingual. We probably have another group out here, but for this slide here, not again, I refer back to not all American Indians are white people. Again, they exhibit these characteristics. They meet each other in the middle somewhere, and sometimes they bounce back and forth. Like with our extended families, oftentimes when we do introduce ourselves, we mention our clans, and sometimes we mention our bands and where we basically come from, our origination of our ancestors. And sometimes it comes from the stories, but the clans that we have, the clans that we belong to. And in the white, they're more into genealogy. They research their background, where they came from, and oftentimes when they do their genealogy for American Indians, they find that a lot of times they hit into areas of where they originated from or where they come from, and sometimes that's attached to their bands and clans. So it's a very for me it's a I use both, um, with things that I do. And there's another one here. It's um, I saw a lot of this, the eye contact and the direct and avoid eye contact. I found this a lot more with the primary kids. And every so often I'll see this within the adult population. A lot of this is because of the authority figure, if you will. They have much more respect for that individual. I did my dissertation on learning styles, and one area of my learning style, they talked a little bit about the eye contact and the avoid eye contact. And my research showed that especially the younger students, they gravitate more to the avoid the on contact, because again they do have respect for the authority figure. The authority figure, me being a teacher, maybe an instructor, or someone that is an education leader, and maybe possibly in the classroom. See, these are basically the two things, and I think you guys probably have observed some of this stuff. And sometimes, I go back to the ownership also. Everything belongs to others versus the ownership. Oftentimes I used to see this also in the classroom. And um, also I see, the carefree, unconcerned with time, as opposed to structured and aware of time. We basically jump back and forth, and sometimes we term this unconcerned with time this Indian time. uh, so sometimes we stretch and take advantage of the certain time. So it and when we get into the structured time, sometimes that becomes like in a structured setting, like in a job setting, in students who are attending school. You got to be on time, uh, I learned one thing from my dad. My dad was a Marine, a Navajo code talker, and he was very, very structured with time. Um, he would say that if you're 5 minutes early, you're 5 minutes late. I guess basically that was from his upbringing, and after he left the reservation and entered the Marine Corps. So it's something that we all adjust to. So these are just a few things, um, and I thought I'd share this with you. We can probably drill down a little bit more on some of the information, because some of the information that I have here, I've used and I observed, and I've always had that in the back of my mind. And this is the second page, with culture, questions about culture identification, as to no question. No, there's no question on culture identification. And sometimes we see this through appropriation. During, like last month, we had Halloween. I didn't see, we had a good group of students, kids that came through here, and I didn't see anybody that was, the appropriation was all, I thought it was pretty good. Um, but see, you get into the larger world, you get no questions about culture identification. You get it on a larger scale. On a larger scale, when we had a big controversy with the what's that Washington Redskins name, and that kind of filtered down into some of the states and their schools, because I believe that there was no consultation between the tribes and the schools. And I think today we have that changed around a little bit, where now you do have that uh, consultation between a school district possibly and a tribe, and you have that questioning of culture identification. So they have an understanding that there is an agreement somewhere, and there's a violation somewhere. There's an inappropriation there, and there's an appropriation. Um, we get into the consultation. It's a face to face, which oftentimes, um, uh, when we do have that consultation, oftentimes that it's a face to face. That's preference, and sometimes it's there's a representative. So some of the things here, it's, again, I think you probably have gone through this process in terms of that. And uh, I saw a lot of this dancing for religious expression versus, dance for pleasure. Being a principal at a high school in Arizona, I saw that, and this was on the reservation. On a Friday night, we had a large powwow to congratulate all the seniors. They go through the process of the spiritual approach to the powwow, and they recognize certain people, certain students, and they're all dressed in their regalia, and some of them are not. But we used to bring them out to the floor and introduce each one of those students. And through that, it was more of a spiritual tone, a spiritual setting, where there was, smudging taking place, eagle feathers given to those students, and you go on and on and on. And that was on a Friday night. On a Saturday night, you turn right around, they have another dance. This time it was like the prom. Those kids are now dressed in the three-piece suit, and they're they're dressed a little bit different, and they're dance. That night they're dancing for pleasure. So there's a difference, a difference between the two groups, and that. But I think that a lot of the American Indians, they go back and forth with and how they express and how they live. And the last is respect other religions as opposed to convert to other religions. And it's I saw this quite a bit, and I think you see this quite a bit for those people who are that used to live and they observe the reservation sing with religion, you know. This is one story that I like to share with you. I had um, my first, I guess, first few years of school. Um, we lived in a small community, and it wasn't too far from where my parents lived. And I invited my parents, and they came to the community, and I drove them around the community, to school, went to the classroom, introduced them to the principal, and we went on, and then we were driving home. There were three churches sitting side by side, about 40 yards apart, and my dad asked, those are churches. He said, yeah. He says, stop here, son. So I pulled over, and he says, I was baptized in all three churches. I was kind of confused. I said, why did you do that? He says, one of those three churches is probably right. you know, it's the right place, the right religion, I guess. But that was the sense of humor that he had. So these are just a few things in terms of the culture comparisons, and that I've been observing quite a bit, and it's always been locked in my mind. And today I just thought I share this with you. So, are there any comments before I move on to the next the updates with the mission and vision statement of our Title VI programs? Hey, let me stop sharing now. Okay. Let me pull up the other screen here. This is the other document that I wanted to go over. This is uh, uh, this is the screen. You guys see that? You guys see this screen?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
we
can
see
see
it.
it.
Okay, good. The top. Well, let me go back to you know the the Department of Education here at Utah State Board of Education. They invited all the departments to have an input on their Utah ESSA consolidated state plan. And they asked for input from the Title VI programs. And specifically, they wanted some documentation in terms of what the Title VI program is all about. So my 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 best shot at that was to bring out the mission statement. And I'm bringing this mission statement out from the Office of Indian Education, and this is basically the top portion, the purposes of the Title VI programs from the Office of Indian Education. I think I've gone over this at the beginning of the year also. The purpose is that, the is to have the students become eligible, as well as participatory, as well as to be involved and participate in the educational process through the academic areas. That was one area. And then the other one is um, to be like a citizen, within the curriculum areas. So basically that was the purpose for all of this from the Office of Indian Education. And all of this is, this is direct quotes from the Office of Indian Education. Now, the bottom portion of this is the vision statement, which was developed by all the Title VI coordinators back in 2010. And he gave this statement with the vision statement as well as the mission statement. And these two statements here are now attached to the ESSA plan, which is part of the Utah State Board of Education Consolidated State Plan. Plus that, this kind of sets the stage for us in terms of what our objectives are and where the program is going. And these two statements are very, very general. And again, these were originated by the Title VI. And for some who have been around since 2010, if you can remember, we sat in a room and we had some ideas as to how to put this whole thing together. And once we put this together and then we massage this a little bit more and we add it and delete it. And this statements we shared also with the tribes. And we had input from the tribes also. Once we had the input from the tribes, then I think I brought it back to the coordinators and then I presented this to the leadership here at USBE. And so now this is part of that plan that was sent to, it's a part of the consolidated plan of the state. So that's what I wanted to share with you today with these two items here. Are there any comments? Okay, if there's no comments, I guess okay. We got the sixth item is the Urban Indian Center are they here today? Is she here today? Or is there a representative from Urban Indian Center here today? I guess not. And Clayton, are you here also? I just wanted to, have you do an update with the novel language class. I guess he's busy also. Okay. All right. Now, the last part is there any updates that you guys like to share from the Title VI or from your position or what you see and observe and, how your programs are and so on and so forth?
I can share a little bit.
Okay.
So we have a new book that we were able to publish through our Heritage Language Resource Center. I don't know if you can see this. I might have to change my camera settings. Hold on. Okay. Can you see this?
Yes, we can.
So it's actually a story about Bija, which is it's a ceremony for Navajo, but the way that the story is written, it really teaches about family and so the main vocabulary words are achine, which is children, atwo, which is soup, Bija, which is prayer ceremony, Bamasane, her grandmother, Bimayeja, her auntie, Biche, her grandfather, and Datani Laj, which is fry bread, and then the Be sheep, the Bebitsen, so mutton, and then the direction of the sunrise, ha, and then ho one, and then Jaklo Gimishbiji, which is blue corn mush, and then Katnaskani, which is cantaloupe and melon. So it just goes, the main character of the story is Twishy. So Twishy is talking to her grandmother, and this story is written both in English and then also you can flip it like our other books, and then it's like written in Navajo. So, but anyways,
What's the name, Brenda?
Bijih, the other English version is still Bijih, but it's the ceremony, and it's written by Leatrice Claw Primo, who used to be a Bluff Navajo language teacher at Bluff Elementary, and then Molly Trainer is our illustrator. So just wanted to do this book share. It is available at our resource center. So if you don't have a copy and you would like one, you can order one from our resource center. And it's a really great family story. The grandmother talks to her daughter about getting ready, that they're having relatives come over, and then they get ready to butcher a sheep. And we try to use more modern day, everyday pictures along with the traditional pictures, which is kind of what students experience nowadays. So we have the family butchering the sheep, preparing for the bijih, and then fixing up the hogan, and getting ready and getting prepared, and then the family actually getting together. So it's a cute little story. We're also working on developing some other stories for this summer with our Navajo language teachers. They want to do a story about the flea market because that's kind of something that the kids like to go to with their families on the weekend, and how you can find a lot of goods there, and then incorporating the Navajo language and then also English. And so those are some things that we're working on. But anyways, this book is available if you want to purchase it from our resource center. That's all I have to share. And thank you.
Oh, there's a question. What's the cost of that book?
Um, I don't have the costs right with me, but I can get the costs and send it to everybody from Rebecca Stoneman, who's she does all of the business aspect of it. So
Yeah,
I will go ask her and then you could probably also look it up on our resource center, our webpage, and she usually has all of the costs breakdowns on our
yeah,
materials as well.
very good. There's interest already that, the cost and where can where's the link to the cost and the book and so on and so forth. I think this is a very good sharing time.
Yeah, I can go and put the link of the resource center in the chat.
Okay. Or you can send it to Madeline and she can send it out to everybody because not everybody is
Oh, okay,
in
I
this
can do
meeting.
that. I
Yeah.
can do that.
So anybody else would like to share? I know that this is the Native American Indian month, dedicated to all American Indian people. And I know that you guys have a lot of activities out there. And if you just like to share, if you like, if not, I understand. Um, there's a one that's coming from Grand School District, and they have a large activity going on this weekend in Moab. And he has the link there that you guys could look into. Um, so I think this is a good thing. And Eileen, go ahead, Eileen. You got give you the floor.
Hello, this is Eileen. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I just wanted to let everyone know that Adopt a Native Elder is doing a holiday boutique sale on December 20th, 21st, and 22nd. That's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It will be held from 10 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock in the evening at Deer Valley Snow Park Lodge in Park City. And the elders will be selling rugs, jewelry, and crafts. So I just wanted to see if I could invite the families to support our Dene elders. Again, this will be December 20, 21, 22, 10 in the morning until 6 at Deer Valley Snow Park Lodge in Park City. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, we got, oh, here you go, Penelope. Here you are.
Hi. Yeah, I can give a couple of updates. We have in a coming week, we have our art market that's happening at the Urban Indian Center. We'll have local vendors, but also vendors from out of town. It's on Saturday and Sunday of November. Let's see, I didn't get the chance to look at the dates. November 23rd and 24th. If you're familiar with Rad Kutch and Edwin Napia's former art market, this is a resemblance of the art market. So if you do have questions, take a look at our website. We do post at uicsl.org. Again, that's the art market at the Urban Indian Center. And I have another update in regard to a community needs assessment that we'll be providing to community members who reside along the Wasatch Front. And I can send that to you, Dr. Foster, to distribute to Title VI coordinators. I'm
Okay.
looking to provide this needs assessment to our coordinators who have upcoming events. If you have any Christmas events that are happening, I know Matthew, you've invited us in the past to your Christmas family function at Jordan High School. So
Oh,
if
you're
that's
always
something,
invited, Penelope. You can come to every gathering. This year it's December 5th
okay,
at Jordan. So if you want to put that down, it's December 5th at Jordan High School from 6 to 8. And we have actually hired Tacey Atsati, who used to work at the Native Village for This Is the Place Heritage Park. We're flying her out from Wisconsin, and she is going to share stories and present. She is now Dr. Tacey
yeah,
Atsati. So we're really excited
awesome.
about that. You're more than welcome to join us, but just you, because Dr. Foster doesn't give me all the money I want, so he can't come anymore. He's no, I'm just kidding. Dr. Foster, you can come too, but you can't eat. No, I'm just kidding.
We're all invited. We're all invited. All right. Well, that is. I'll look forward to that. Another one of the other updates. We do have our clinic that is in Murray. I'll try to get some more details on that next month. But I look forward to seeing you all in the coming months with our activities. But there again, I can send Dr. Foster some flyers related to the art market because I know some of the families may not know. But other than that, um, I'll see you next month and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Thank you, Penelope. Anybody else?
I just included the link of what we're doing for Native American month in all our schools. So that's what this link is. So if you click on it, then you'll be able to see what our calendar looks like for several of our schools
Okay. Thank
for
you.
San Juan School District.
All right. Anne Marie from Alpine, do you have an update for us too?
Yeah, I just wanted to let people know about this event. I guess you can't see it, but it's a flyer about tonight's event. The Indian Parent Committee here in Alpine is having a fundraiser, but the purpose of we're collecting money for a fundraiser, but really the event is about inviting the community to learn about Native Americans from Native Americans. And so we are going to have fry bread for sale. We're going to have dance performances, a silent auction. We're going to do a round dance, potato dance, and we're going to have Native vendors there. So if you don't have anything to do tonight, we'd love for you to come. It's going to be at American Fork High School from 6:30 to 8:30, and you're all welcome.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Okay, and anyone else would like to share?
Dr. Foster, this is Sarai. I missed half the meeting last week. Did we get an update on the other batch of funding from the state?
Yeah, that's going through the levels of approval. I did a follow-up last Thursday, last Wednesday or Thursday, and it's still through the approval process. So got to be,
Awesome. Thank you.
yeah, you bet.
I
Any,
have something, Dr. Foster, if that's
okay,
kosher. And I'm even going to turn my camera on. You might even see a ginger face here. I don't know. Let's maybe not. Sometimes my camera doesn't want to work. So it looks like it's not going to work. You're all spared looking at me. But I will say, I had a plan for this year to bring in Project 562 that presented at NIEA with Matiko Wilbur, and it was pretty cool. She's absolutely incredible. She is hands down the best Native American presenter that I have ever seen. She was hilarious. She was entertaining. She was engaging. Her pacing was wonderful. And she's visited every Native American tribe in the United States. So we wanted to bring her in for our winter gathering and make it a much bigger event. But the deal is, it costs $14,000 to bring her in. Now, I'm willing to contribute a sizable chunk to that, but Canyons can't handle the cost on its own. And I would like to do this next year. We could hold it at Jordan High School. I actually arranged to get the auditorium, but funding is just not there. So I am wondering if there are other coordinators who can write it into their grant and contribute to that next year. And since we're all here, I figured now is the best time to ask.
okay,
Excuse
okay,
me.
okay. Thank you, Matthew. So if they're interested, they'll get in contact with you straight directly with you.
Cool. Email me
Okay,
if you're interested.
okay. All right, thanks, Matthew. Is there anybody else would like to share their updates? If there's no other updates or um, I was hoping that Clayton would be on to share the update on the novel language class and the upcoming government class also. So maybe he's busy today, so we'll excuse him. If there are no other additional information, we'll go to number 8 is we're going to adjourn. And again, I'd like to thank everyone, for your efforts and things that you do for your students. This month being particularly focusing in on American Indians or Native Americans, whichever name you would like to use. But I think the premise is that you showcase, the tribes and their culture and their language and their lifestyle and their beliefs, their values, their traditions, any way you can, because I think this is a great opportunity to express that in your school districts with your teachers, with your programs, with even with your school district. So, I'm glad that you guys are doing certain things for your community and your students. And I think the second part to that is that I think the appreciation comes from the parents, and the appreciation comes from their teachers, because I think teachers know that who comes into the building, who comes into their classrooms, who's meeting the contacts. And the other piece is that the parents, they like to see stuff like this, although that they may not be um, well, they may not be ready to participate, but they like to see things like this. I think sometimes way down deep, it's something that they really appreciate, even though they may not say it. So I appreciate all of you. I you know I you know with things that you say and do, and the programs that you run. So with that, we'll see you next December the 14th. And other than that, have a good, safe holiday coming up. Eat a lot of turkey, and if you stop there, eat some more. So we'll see you guys in December.
You have my word, Dr. Foster. You have my word that I will follow those instructions.